From the records of the Office of War, we have this picture, dating from 1941 to 1945. It is labeled, Bertha Stallworth, age 21, shown inspecting the end of a 40mm artillery cartridge case at Frankfurt Arsenal. This is Bertha Stallworth, a young black woman who was trying to make a living by working in a factory during World War II. But our story is not about Bertha Stallworth. We are going to talk about Ruth Franklin. In 1926, a black baby girl was born into a world that would be cruel to her, due only and unfairly to her race. Her parents named her Ruth. In 1940, her father was selected in the peacetime draft, the Selective Training and Service Act. He was told he would only have to serve 1 year, and his family avoided worrying too much and hoped for his return home. In 1941, Pearl Harbor was attacked. Her family had just come home from their early church service, and their mother had the radio on. When they heard of the attack, there was silence throughout their house. Her father soon found out that his draft was extended for the rest of the war. The devastation had begun. But with that devastation came opportunity. The year was now 1943, and Ruth was 17 years old and still in high school, hoping to graduate in 1944 along with less than half of her classmates. She was walking downtown one day and she saw a flyer posted. It said, "Now hiring. 40 cents per hour. Factory work, unskilled workers needed." Ruth hesitated for a second, but she knew that after her father was drafted, her family could really use the money. She then wrote down the address to apply. She was going to get that job, no matter what it took. In 1941, war industries were just starting to develop in preparation for World War II, and whites were filling in the jobs. It was then that A. Philip Randolph, the leader of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, sent this letter to Walter White. No, it's not that Walter White. This one's a member of the NAACP. This letter said, "To this end, I have decided to undertake the organization of a march of 10,000 Negroes or more upon Washington." Randolph wanted blacks to have the same opportunities in taking up these new factory jobs, which were opened after the war. In order to stop this march, President Franklin Roosevelt issued an executive order of the Committee on Fair Employment Practices, which was designed to investigate and act on employment discrimination. The Congress of Racial Equality was also founded in 1942 and became a leading organization for civil rights and against racial segregation. With these improvements in the world in mind, Ruth hoped to get the job. When Ruth arrived at the factory, she was nervous but mostly excited. She soon found out that the work was too much to do at the same time with her schoolwork, at least not if she wanted to support her family well. She decided to drop out of high school and take a full-time job at the factory, joining many of her peers at this time. She was assigned to produce small metal parts for guns, along with ammunition. Her pay was as advertised, a whopping 40 cents per hour. The minimum wage at the time was 30 cents, or $4.05 in today's dollars, adjusted for inflation. But the factory needed workers so bad they were willing to pay well. Ruth was happy that things were starting to look better. Her town seemed happier. More people had jobs, and there was more money in the system. She was soon sent to be trained at Frankfurt Arsenal, the location of the original picture. Frankfurt Arsenal in Pennsylvania was a leader during World War II in both producing ammunition, but also training employees of private companies. It was there that Ruth learned the basics of mass production and military ammunition. However, when she returned, she was not treated well by her coworkers. The number of black women in the workforce during 1940 to 1950 grew by 50%. Not only that, but the wage gap between black and white female workers rose by 15% during the 1940s. Yet despite all of these accomplishments, white women often did not want to work alongside black women. In the original picture, it is hard to tell, but there are a few white women in the background, who seem to be a bit separated from Bertha. Ruth went through the same thing, with white women who avoided her and expressed that they did not wish to work alongside her. At first, Ruth was discouraged by this, but she soon became determined to work hard regardless of those around her, who were unfair and disrespectful to her. She was glad to be doing her part for her country, even though she was not always appreciated for her contributions. However, Ruth realized that she had to do something with her life, and since she had saved up so much money from working, and her family was doing better because they were able to find jobs, she realized she wanted to go to college. Ruth applied for and was accepted into Tuskegee University, a historically black college in Alabama, after completing high school. And one day, when Ruth came back home to say a final goodbye to her family, her father surprised her, having returned home for retraining after serving in his honored black battalion through the war. As Ruth traveled to her new college, she saw an advertisement for another factory job, with just as good a pay as the last one, in the city she was going to. Ruth knew that she would take this one to help pay for her student loans, and this time she wouldn't let anyone treat her differently, at least not if she could help it. Thank you.